Hello fellow homesteaders. Today we're going to learn the basics of making corn husk flours. There are literally thousands of pictures and tutorials on Pinterest and YouTube, and I'm sure other places online as well, and they'll show you how to make simple to intricate, incredibly beautiful works of art corn silk flours. What I found when I was learning how to make the flours was there were tons of videos you could watch to learn different design techniques. But I did not really find anything that showed you just the very beginning basics of how to prep the corn shucks, the corn husks, best ways to cut them, and the best and cheapest ways to collar them if you wanted to. Some videos showed you real quick, here's how we cut it, boom, 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 and they were all done with that and moving on. If you're not artsy or you've not worked with this type of material before, which is, a different type of texture, you have to get it just pliable enough. This one was soaked in water for about 10 seconds. It'll move however I want it to move. Get it too pliable, it's going to fall apart. You get it too stiff, I don't really have a super stiff one handy. You get it too stiff, and it is also going to tear and rip and not be any good for your project. So you can find out different design techniques and how you want to do something with your corn husk when you're done with them in many places online. I hope you do, and hopefully you share back some pictures of your creations on the New Life on the Homestead social media pages. What we're going to do is a slow, normal speed basics, so you have an idea of exactly how to start out with a good foundation materials before you choose to make flowers of multiple types. This one I've made so it could be backed and hung on a wreath or a basket, something like that. And actually, to show you how simple this material can be to work with, my grandchildren made this one, both under the age of 5. I'll bring it a little bit closer here. I did not use RIT dye on this. RIT dye is what is recommended, and it's great. I've used it hundreds of times. I used it to dye knee pads about 15 years ago for a volleyball team. But there are two problems with using the RIT dye that I see for you homesteading crafters who want to make good use of the whole entire corn plant, use as gifts or decor, and do it economically. It's now like $3 something a bottle, which isn't really expensive on its own, but you only need a tinky tiny bit. And if you're going to do the flowers and the stems and the leaves, you're going to need at least 3 bottles. You might want more than one color flower, so there's 4 bottles. So you're looking at $12, $15 and perhaps more. And once you mix it up, maybe you could finagle around, figure out how to use it just a little tiny bit and get the color to be true, so you don't have to use the whole bottle. But once it's opened or you make your dye, it only lasts for so long. So there's a whole lot of waste there. And homesteaders don't like waste. I know that we have suburban and urban homesteaders, and that's awesome. Keep up the good work. Wish you could all live where we did. And they would have the benefit of being able to walk into pretty much any store and pick up RIT dye. But if you're rural like I am, nowhere my county sells it. The old grocery store before it closed used to have 2 or 3 collars, but that was it. So it's not quite as handy for everybody to find. And a lot of those tutorials you see online, they are using very wide, large pieces of corn husk, and they've purchased theirs instead of taking something out of their garden. And you can see how this fits on my hand. It only covers maybe half of my palm. A lot of the ones they're buying are a lot wider. What kind of corn it is, how they get it so wide, I have no idea. I did trim this to kind of a feather, kind of a flower petal type shape to use in a project making corn husk flowers. But I did not narrow it any at all from what it was. And this was one of my widest ones, is why I chose to show it to you. On these videos, they suggest you go to your nearest local Mexican food shop or international grocer to pick up dried corn silks. Well, that would work if you lived in an urban area or possibly even a suburban area, but not where most of us live. And if you're a suburban or urban homesteader, I don't know you'd be growing corn in the city, but you can grow some corn in your suburban backyard. You're not going to have corn husks that are really any larger than this either. And this is rather long. It goes from the tip of my middle finger down past my palm. Plenty of room to work with if you're going to tie them and bend them to make something long, and it's nice and wide enough to draw a flower petal on. So you can go about making your petals several ways. They touch upon those in some of those videos that I mentioned. Some make a template using dry and hard corn husks before they've dampened them. Others use a piece of construction paper or cardstock paper. I use the manila folder. So you could use either one to make you a template if you want everything to be exact. And then all that you do is you lay whatever that you are using onto your corn husk, but you definitely need to dampen it first. Like I said, this is pliable, and you get when it's good and nice and dry, that's going to keep a long time. You can hear it crinkling. It's going to be stiff like this. You can soak it in water. Some people actually boil them and wait overnight and use them the next day because they're still pliable. They do that so they are nice and have a very perfectly flat surface to work with, which if you're weaving a basket or a certain type of wreath, that could be helpful. You can spritz with a squirt bottle, but all my squirt bottles right now are full of my homemade cleaning and health remedies. So I just put a lukewarm water in a cup. I'll dip it down in there for just a second or two. And that already took it from being crinkly to pliable, enough so that I can wring it out like it's a washcloth. I will put it back here in my workspace, and I can smooth it out well enough with my hand that it's pretty well straight. I don't have the patience to do overnight. If you're a busy homesteader, you may not have that kind of time. So you can fold it out straight. Some people actually iron them to get them perfectly straight. I'm a feral wife. I don't own an iron. I figure if you take something straight out of the dryer and hang it up and use your homemade wrinkle releaser, it's just wrinkle-free enough. So this is laid out here. And you can, like I said, use a template, or you could just take your scissors, and it actually might be a little bit too wet for scissors. You may have to wait a couple of minutes. We'll give it a shot. And just cut what you like as a petal shape and desired length. And you could always take your petals afterwards and lay them on top of each other to make them a bit more uniform. Any flowers that you see that are made, whether out of this material or something else, are going to have perfectly shaped, consistent petals, but Mother Nature doesn't always make them so it depends on how natural you might want to be. So here's a nice petal shape, just quickly freehand with a little pair of Fiskars scissors. And some of the other tutorials that you will see online, especially the ones that have the big wrap your tamale style corn silks, which are awesome if you have access to them. They will take one corn silk and lay top of another, and then they will put their template on there and draw it out, much like you would fabric if you're cutting the front and back for a dress. If you have some pieces that are large and you're not doing a large flower, these ones will be great to do a large flower, because you can take several together and tie them at the bottom and then fluff them out. But if you have some that are about this size, like I said, top of my fingertip to down past my palm, and you're not needing exceptionally large petals, you just need small or medium, you put one on top of the other, and then you fold it over, give it a little crease. Carefully it can tear. That one that was so wet just a minute ago, it now ripped. They dry that quickly. And you can fold it over and put your template on it. I would suggest using chalk or a colored pencil. On this one I did with the grandchildren, you can see I used permanent marker, and the marker definitely bleeds through. This stuff soaks up color very quickly. And you can always just trim that off. In the middle of this one, to add a little bit more texture and interest for the children, I took some corn kernels and we hot glued them to it. And then we went over it with a little bit of a brown marker just to add some different depth and texture, make it more like Indian corn. But here I have my template on here, and I'm just going to trace around it. And just enough lines that you can see. I think that's why a colored pencil works pretty well. But you could also just hold your template in one hand and keep your thumb on it pretty tight and cut around it. But I think I have enough lines here. I can see my template pretty well. It's faded, but it's just enough that I can see it and I don't have to worry about it fading through. Most paints will cover that up. Red dye definitely would. But if you're wanting to do a flower that's just a natural cornstarch color and not paint it, it would be very difficult to use a marker or even darker colored pencil. Okay, it was a little damn good at Whopper job. But just that quickly, I have 4 petals that are pretty close to identical. And it doesn't look like a lot when you're thinking I'm doing a whole flower. I need umpteen of them. No, you really don't, depending on the type of flower that you're doing. What you wrap it around as a base, and then you crinkle them. So these have just enough stem that I could fold them, and we fluff them around. A lot of the hibiscus flowers and simpler flowers like that, like an iris or something, they use 4 to 6 flowers, and they mold them around their hand and fluff them out. You could put anything in the middle of it that you wanted to make, a piston. You could use a little piece of white paper that's rolled up and painted, a piece of popsicle stick, pipe cleaners, or you could actually go the route of things you might not have at the house and go buy, which would be the floral wire and wrap. But sometimes it's going to have some kind of wire around. You could wrap these flowers together. You could use twine. You could use some of your sewing or embroidery thread. You could even use a rubber band if you wanted to. And then, you would decorate however you wanted. Here's 4 of them. You could do 2 more and do 6 or 8. You could do a second row like I did on here, something more intricate where you went around 3 or 4 rows and made them deeper. Another one I did with the grandkids, which would be something I could do with this one. You can give it a little bit more depth and texture, give it a little pinch, and just add a little bit of a crease. You do have to be gentle so it doesn't tear. I've seen some videos where I've never tried it yet, but I'm curious to, where they actually use a curling iron on it, on low heat, and just very quickly, and they're using a long one, something like this, and they want a ruffled edge this way, or even have it turned down this way. And you just put your curling iron on it, hold it for about 2 seconds, and let go, and it will keep a nice permanent weave there, kind of like Farrah Fawcett's haircut from the 80s. But when they're damp, you can mold them a bit and how that you would like them to stay and crease them. And if you really want to hold that position well, you can get out a hair dryer and do a little bit of drying on front and back, or turn them over if you want them to go out, and put them straight down and hold them out if you want them to stay flat. Maybe put a little bit more water on it and use an iron or just your hair dryer, going back and forth. I always use low heat when I put them together and use my glue gun. I use a low heat setting on there because they will burn and tear very quickly. And if they get hard while you're working with them, just dip in some water again. It doesn't matter how many times that you dip them. Now, lots of people will use a floral wire or some other type of things like that you would use in typical artificial flower making to make a stem for their flowers. You can use a stick from out in the yard. I happen to have plenty of pipe cleaners laying around from doing projects with grandkids. We were making bendy people. So what I did here is I just hot glued my pipe cleaner to a nice long piece of corn husk. And I'm going to put, sorry, my glue stick fell off. This gun's about had it, but it's been under heavy use for at least 2 years, and I purchased it from the Dollar Tree. So I think I've gotten my money's worth, and I'm not going to complain about it not working well now. I'm just going to need to get a new one before my next project. You guide the glue a little bit. Just put some glue on your stick or on your pipe cleaner, whatever it is you might be using, and fold. Yeah, even low temp hot glue hurts. Boy, I'm biting my tongue here, guys. You will probably burn your finger a little bit. You could use a different type of crafting glue instead of hot glue. I use E6000 a lot. Hot glue just seems to work really well in this. It melds it into place quickly. And then roll it around a little bit to get a stem shape if you want your flowers to be standing up in a glass or wrapped around the edge of a basket. And you can make your own stem. I'm going to flip over the end here so it covers my pipe cleaner. Or if you find that you have not enough once you fold it in your pipe cleaner showing, you can just snip that off. So now you have the bendableness of wire without really having any money into it. Of course, that stick from your yard is going to be more rigid. Maybe you have some grapevine, you could wet it and get it position you wanted before it hardens and stays, and you tuck it around. So with this, you could paint it green, you could paint it brown, you could paint it whatever you wanted to, depending on what you wanted it to be used for in your project. I've mixed this brown. Oh, that's about gone. Like I said, these are just very cheapy paints from the grandkids bag in my crafting section, just to show you how easily this stuff takes color. I have more expensive craft paints, but I saw no need to use them. These were all from Dollar Tree. So put my brush in here a little bit, and I mixed some colors on this one. This here was a very bright orange. As you can see with the paint, I just mix it with some brown for more of a fall tone. But you can go ahead if you want this to maybe resemble a stick, if you want it to be green and resemble a vine, whatever you might want to do. This project is going to be a branch, and then I'm going to come off of it with some more cut pipe cleaner that will be painted green for leaves. And it will wind around, and it's going to have some honeysuckle style flowers on top made out of corn silk. but it takes the paint very quickly. It doesn't take much. I would say kind of similar to putting stain on wood. And what I did with the other ones to give it a muted look, when I painted those flowers, I got my hands nice and messy and just rubbed it up and down to help it soak it up more quickly and to let just a little hint of the natural corn husk show through. It gives it a little bit of texture and depth instead of just some flat color painted item. So you can actually make this your stem, and where you have the bendable wire in it, if you were doing something with long corn husk flowers like this, and you have them work together the way I showed earlier with a rubber band or piece of wire, then you can just wrap this around your actual flower, and you have a stem that can attach to anything. You can stick it down into some styrofoam that they use in artificial flower making. Another thing you can do with a pipe cleaner, or just a piece of paper that you folded over several times and rolled into a circle, is you can fold it to make the center of your flower. I folded this one several times. I put some hot glue on it, folded it around, made it nice and tight, and I took two what would be petals and I hot glued them to it. I'll just tear off a couple pieces here. I've seen this in several tutorials, and I really like it as a quick way to make a middle for your flower and to hold everything together. Of course, they were using a more expensive artificial flower making type wire, but you just take your petal, oh, the nice burn of hot glue again. Take your petal and you put it right into the loop here, and you take your pipe cleaner, you bend it around, give it a little squeeze to hold it into place. You want to maintain your circle in the middle because that will be the center of your flower. You can paint it, you can put a piece of little cute little pebble you painted, you can take a piece of felt that you've cut out into a circle. You can actually just paint the pipe cleaner, or if you choose a collar pipe cleaners like I happen to have, you can just let your center be that collar. As you can see, it's now firmly into place, and you can bend and shape these how you want to. You can paint them before you cut them. You can paint, cut out your petals, then paint them. You can paint the whole piece of husk that you were working with, or you can wait until they're actually on the flower and paint them there. And if you let them dry, if you want to put a clear coat on them, you can. So if I was going to make a flower that I wanted to stand up, or even make one that's you want to have a nice round shape, I would just keep adding more petals to this and bending it around. If I wanted multiple layers, as soon as I finish my one loop, I would cut more petals here, take it around again with hot glue to secure it into place, and so on until I had as many circular groupings of the petals that I wanted to do if I wanted to make a very large one. And on the back of it, if you want to be able to mount to something, you actually could just pull off a piece of your corn husk and hot glue it there. You could use a piece of cardboard, poster board, anything you wanted that you traced to make the same size to give it a nice firm backing. If you wanted to take the flower and have it be pointing out, glued to a package maybe, or to a wreath, there's really endless options. But in all the videos that I watched, like I mentioned before, they really did not take any time to show you how you could inexpensively or free, depending on your scrap materials, get through these basic steps to get you the petals you wanted, or to understand how you could attach them. They were all into great detail about how to make a specific type of flower, which was wonderful. But you also need to understand the steps that it is to get the flowers painted and cut out, and figure out how on earth they shaped them to stay into that circle that they were in, or how they got the metal wire to stand up, and what gauge the wire was, and could you substitute for something you already have at home. So that was the goal of this video, and I hope it helped. If you have questions, please put them in the comments section below the article, and I'll try to answer them. This is, you know, it's still, if you can see how pliable it is, I can move it. I don't want to go crazy because it's starting to get dry on the end. The ends that are more shallow will dry more quickly, so you want them bendable enough to move. And if you're going to paint them, or even use marker works just as well. If you're not one that's, you know, vibrant color, which the die will give you. If I'm working with a piece that's nice and stiff, I've just taken off the husk, and I decide that I want to paint it, I'm going to paint them and not let them be natural before I can skip the actual watering step, because the paint that you put on it, you'll see here in just a second, this is crinkly and hard just like the one before. I can put paint on it before I cut my petals, which kind of makes two steps in one. That speeds up the process. And you want to paint the back of it, and it's okay, you can turn it over wet, just put something down your workspace, And I found that when you paint it this way, you get that natural texture in, like I use my fingers to get on my stem over here. You can see just a little bit coming through. But go ahead and paint it, and then just immediately flip it right over. Not much of the paint's going to come off, and what it does is just going to give it more of a natural hue and some depth. And I've got hot glue on my hand. My paint sprayed everywhere. So just turn it over, paint the other side, unless you're going to mount it flat onto a package and you don't mind any of the underneath showing. But to see, it was very stiff, and now instead of using water, I just took out a step, saved myself some time, and it's nice and pliable. And if you are going to use it whole, say you're going to use a whole big, do a large flower, or you're going to do a flower like in some of the tutorials where you take one piece, it's not going to be this big, you're actually going to bend it over onto itself and make every long corn husk an actual flower, or to make a bow with it, you can go ahead and fold it over while it's really pliable, spread it out so it looks how you want. Have a little fan shape, which would work for a bow or a petal. This is if you want to remain flat, a flat flower that you're going to make, you go ahead and push it down. If you want it to be poofed up, do that also with your fingers. Just move them through there so it kind of holds the shape that you want more as it dries. You could put a paper clip or a clothespin on it if you want to have it hold that shape. And some people use hairspray. I've never tried that. I don't have hairspray. My hair just does what it wants. But you could go ahead and put a clothespin on it, lay it down and lay it sideways so the broad part of the clothespin is touching your table or workspace, and it should hold it in that open spot. It'll dry that way. If you don't have the time to do that, or you've tried it and it doesn't work what you want, go ahead and just hold it this way and get out a hair dryer and dry it in through the middle on low heat, mostly in through the middle, and there's a little bit in the outside so it dries as well. And this works just like if you're going to double them over and do your paint petals. You just need to wait till it dries a little bit more than this. If you can see how meltable it is in my hand right now, it's almost like a piece of chewing gum. It's not going to cut really well if you want an exact shape. So, I don't know, 3 minutes maybe, and it'll be dry enough to cut. At 5 minutes or so, it's going to be back to being kind of brittle, just like these ones are now. Which is, what you want. And now they're drying, if you want them to have a certain texture. I tried on this one. It's harder when they're smaller. I just kept giving it a crease, about a couple creases every couple of minutes, and then it gave it a dimension where it stood up a little bit. So these are some basic techniques on how you can work with the cheapest materials that you probably have on hand, and showing you different ways to cut out the petals. And it will all vary depending on what type of flower that you're making. But now you can practice some of the basic steps before you watch a tutorial where it might go a lot more quickly, telling you how to put it together and assemble it. It's just a little bit difficult to learn how to do it and watch somebody do it quickly at the same time. So you might actually be able to get a couple of your steps done, prepped and ready, so you can move along with the videos instead of trying to figure them out and do them at the same time. Thank you.